Hi everyone. It's Ana Cheka
and this is Omar.
And we are also Miss Cheka and Mr. Marquez.
Yes.
And we're here to discuss this episode of Abbott Elementary. What's this episode, Omar?
Yeah, so this is the third episode of the first season, and the title of this episode is called The Wish List. Right?
Yes. I think that we should address the fact that we took a short hiatus for spring break.
Yes, we did. Yes, cheers to us.
All right.
Well deserved. So if you hear us sounding perkier than we did
from the last episode,
it's because we had some rest.
Yes. All right, Omar, I hadn't watched this episode in a while, and I just watched a whole bunch of clips, and it gave me a wave of the emotions I felt when I first watched it. So this is an episode where they don't have enough school supplies.
Right.
And they're, poor Barbara doesn't have her school supplies, but her philosophy is kind of the Lord provides, right? And then, so Janine does Donors Choose, and her feeling is that she's younger and more with it, so it's just, and she offers to do one for Barbara. Barbara's very resistant, and then she ends up going behind Barbara's back and then having Ava, the principal, do one, and then it turns out to be a disaster.
A complete disaster.
Disaster.
A successful disaster.
A successful
they do
disaster.
Get their
yeah, it's true. And then there's kind of a B story of Janine encouraging Gregory with his room.
Yeah.
So should we talk about the wish list?
Yeah,
first?
the wish list. Well, my first thoughts was that as a first year teacher, right, the wish list kind of saved my life because I had just finished subbing, so the pay wasn't that great, and I was about to start the full school year. So I created a wish list, and my people, my family, my friends, they were happy to support me, and I even through Donors Choose got us a 3D printer. So there's some good things and then some bad things to it also, which I think this episode highlights.
Well, okay.
What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are very conflicting.
Yeah.
Right? My thoughts are very conflicting because I have on the one hand, I'm a hardline purist for so many things, which makes it difficult to live life. And on the other hand, I live in the world.
Yeah.
And I have to make compromises. But I don't believe in crowdfunding.
Yeah.
I don't believe in crowdfunding for public schools because the whole episode, all I'm thinking is this is a horrifying dystopian nightmare, right? That healthcare in our country is crowdfunded and that public schooling in our country is crowdfunded. And really the solution here is not what flavor of Donors Choose videos to make, but everybody needs to vote and have a decent budget, right? So I feel strongly enough about this that in the last big school funding bill in Texas, in that legislative session, I actually went to Austin,
right,
and begged, basically with my little Oliver Twist, please sir, can we have some more, from door to door. So it's not something that I feel this is my casual opinion. I actually really feel strongly about this because I think that the more that we as teachers provide for stuff out of our own pockets, we all that does is that we make district leaders feel that's not a line item that they have to budget for. And I'll give you a specific example. I'm an English teacher, books.
Yeah.
Right. So books is something that when I started out, the district would provide us, and now that is explicitly seen as a responsibility for your friends and families rather than for you.
Yeah. I didn't even know that.
I don't get a line item for a need.
Books.
Yeah, for books, right?
In an English classroom.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that is really frustrating to me,
Yeah.
And then for the public, I think that donating to Donors Choose gives you the feeling of I've done this nice thing, right? But where we live in Fort Worth, Texas, 6% of voters showed up for the last election. 94% of voters did not. So if a fraction of the people who had a Donors Choose donation would just vote.
Yeah, it'd help out much more.
It would help out more. So I know that is a super wet blanket systemic thing, but I just want to toss that out there for all of our millions and thousands of listeners on our podcast. I very, very, very much appreciate the donations, but also check and see what your state funding, your per student funding is. And if you live in the Texas, ours is in the 40s. Like we're at the very, very bottom of like per student funding. So like that is my systemic sort of thing. My like, well, but I live in the world is that sometimes you have things that are not like books, right? So like books are the basic tools that I need to do my job as an English teacher, but all, you know, there are things that are extras that we need, the kids need. I guess that's kind of not the definition of extra, but I would say like, I don't think I could have taught basically for the last like decade of my career if my friends and families hadn't been so generous.
Yeah.
And every single Christmas, birthday, I always get gift cards to bookstores, and that is basically how I do my classrooms. Every couple of years I need a new class set, and people just super come through. So on the one hand, I'm incredibly grateful on an individual level and on like a big level. On the other hand, like, God, I'm frustrated, and I wish that people would just give a budget, because y'all, we don't do the highway system like that.
Yeah, true.
We do not do the highway system like that. You do not crowdfund for like sidewalks or highways or bridges, right? And the public schools are public infrastructure, but also like when I said like conflicting feelings, like if I'm talking to you, a new teacher, I'm sure like one of the things that you get told, because it's true, is that don't spend your own money because you'll bankrupt yourself. Yeah. Right? Like ask for help, put up the list, put the stuff, and we'll all circulate them and support them and whatever. Right? So like I think that as a teacher, you're constantly in this tension between like, okay, I know that I shouldn't bankrupt myself, and I know that I should be asking for help, and also this is really frustrating.
Yeah, it's super frustrating because, like, for example, I'm a science teacher, and, you know, I feel like science class is usually the one that students rely on, you know, for the activities, for the hands-on stuff, or the quote, fun stuff, as they call it. So I always find myself stressing out about, like, what to plan for them. Not just planning it, but, like, actually getting the materials.
Yes.
And, like, as a science department, we get together sometimes, and I remember the very first time that they explained to me how to order something. It was like 1,000 different steps, and that by the time that the district got it, the link would be expired from the Amazon shopping cart. So it's like at that point, it's just easier to go get it yourself, and it just puts you in a loop, and it's just super frustrating.
Okay, that thing that you just said of easier to go get it yourself, it just, ooh. Because I think that's something that the public doesn't consider. Right, is the difference between a donation and a budget is that a donation becomes a part-time job on top of the job that you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So we see that a lot in this episode where, like, Barbara doesn't do these published, you know, these very polished videos, and Ava loves to do the super, you know, she has a social media presence, she does this, she does that, she does whatever. But, like, I God, I have so many stories, but one of them is one of the most frustrated moments I've ever had, like in my career, is I once went to the front office of the school where I was working and asked in sort of like a casual way to the school secretary who did the ordering, like, hey, on the next order, could you put in some pencil top erasers? Right? Could you put in some pencil top erasers? And that unleashed such a flood, not from, God bless her, our school secretary, but another woman who was an employee of the school district who happened to be in the office at the time. And that woman gave me a long, you know, she suggested stores where I could buy them. She suggested grants that I could apply to that has stuff. She suggested putting a social media post. She's just like, there's all of these suggestions on things that I can do to, like, apply for a grant for school supplies for this stuff. Here are these stores you could get in your car and drive to the store and get the stuff. Places that have sales on, you know, the stuff. And the whole time I'm like, I don't understand why the thing that I'm asking it is so far out of bounds, like, or why it can't be recognized in this moment that, like, it's not even the dollar value of the pencil top erasers. It's that my profession is English teacher. Like, English teacher, right? So, like, all of these things that you are naming are, like, not English teacher. So, like, in the amount of time that it would take me, so, like, the solutions here are so ludicrously outsized to what the need is. And, like, the need is something. Oh, she also gave me a long lecture on how she thought that we should just be using pens, because if we use pens, then we wouldn't need pencil top erasers, because they wouldn't, pens last longer than pencils. And I just can't imagine another profession where you would be nickel and dime to this extent, or made to feel like you're the one who's being unreasonable or selfish because you don't want to go to the store and buy like a thing. I just want to go to the office and get some erasers.
Right. Erasers for a pencil.
Yeah. And it was, I just remember it. And also, like, when it comes to things like grants, I have done grants, but I think the public doesn't understand, like, how time consuming grant applications are. And how that is just, it literally can be like a part-time job on top of the job that you have, which you already don't have a huge amount of time for.
Right. But there are full-time positions just for grant.
Yes.
Applying, like.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and like the funny thing is that we have an office in our district which is called grant office, which in another universe would be like the office that would help you get grants, but function as like the roadblock to keep you from the grant that you've already gotten approved from. So yeah, no, I have that story. The first school that I ever taught at, you had to do a written form for any office supplies that you wanted. So if I wanted like a dry erase marker for myself, I would have to like write out a form for it. And I remember that one of the things that they were so cheap on is you could fill out a form and get clear tape, like Scotch tape, but not the dispenser for it.
Oh.
Like the dispenser you would have to pay for out of your own pocket.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's, everybody has some kind of super frustrating.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So like, woo, this episode just tapped into a lot of capital F feelings that I have.
Yeah. And
just make a budget. Like literally just make a budget.
And yeah, that would probably keep people from making these super depressing emotional videos, just targeting and showing people how poor schools are, I guess.
Oh my God! Okay, so I think like we have to discuss. Okay, so of the video, I think there's two big things to pull out from that I would love to hear your opinion on, or like that we need to discuss. So the way that Janine finally gets the stuff for Barbara is that Ava does the video, but she does this trauma porn video.
Yeah, trauma porn, that's what it is, yeah.
Right, so she does a trauma porn video highlighting how the school is so poor, and poor Barbara is so old and decrepit, and like so on and so forth. I can't remember everything in the video, but like it's a pull your heartstrings, sort of stuff. So I feel like, to me, the things that jumped out are, one, like the there's my deep sigh of like the ageism, or not even ageism. I don't know if ageism is the right word here, because like one frustration that I have had in the past with people is so if the model is everything is crowdfunded for public schools rather than everything comes from a budget, then the onus is on every individual teacher to have enough influence online to get yours funded, right? So like after I did the, went and begged for, stuff with the Texas legislature, one of the lawmakers, his chief of staff, this is Craig Goldman, by the way, who can kiss my butt then and now. I'm still mad about this. Anyway, his office did a big thing on like how he didn't know anything about several very key and elementary parts of the bill. For instance, he claimed not to have any kind of understanding on whether early childhood education helps with literacy, which is wow. Okay, so I sent him a whole bunch of policy papers from Harvard. By the way, podcast listeners, yes, if you teach kids how to read when they're little, it does in fact help with literacy. Just as a sidebar, just in case you also are confused on that point, along with Mr. Goldman, who is in charge of our state. So, but the other thing is that he was kind of hesitant about voting for the school funding bill because his chief of staff told me he would prefer to do a nonprofit and just do donations, right? Which is, no, that's not what we need. We do not need donations from private citizens. We need funding, right? So, and the thing I said in that office and the thing I'll say here on this podcast is like, the difference is like, Omar, I bet you're already like getting pretty good at picking out what the sales are, right? Mm-hmm. At Target or at Walmart or whatever for school supplies, which is great. You know what you and I cannot like save up for and get on sale? Fire alarms for our school.
Oh, yeah.
Which are being installed, by the way, over spring break.
Right.
That's like a real thing our school did not have. Computers, laptops, right?
Promethean boards. Promethean boards, there since I was a student, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. The HVAC system. Right. So again, like buying, like donating like composition books, it makes you feel as though you have done a thing, but actually like HVAC is quite an important thing in schools, right? Mm-hmm. So when I expressed this online, the immediate reaction that I had online was, why don't you do a donors choose? It just made me feel like, okay, I feel like nobody understood what I said, right? Nobody understood what I said. But the problem with that is what Barbara is experiencing, right? Is Barbara more or less worthy than Janine to get school supplies?
No.
Are her students more or less worthy, right? So, like, you and I, Omar, both love social media. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, that benefits us because when our students need something, then we can do stuff.
Right.
But if you or I were, like, a middle-aged, art teacher in Del Rio, do our students deserve things less because we're not social media savvy?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that,
Right? So if you make school funding basically a giant popularity contest.
Yeah.
So the students of teachers that are not online or not Ava and they don't have like the ring light, those students just don't get...
Yeah, the only teachers that would get funding are the teachers, TikTok superstars that are
there you go,
rising up.
That is exactly the thing. So that stood out to me of like, I just feel like Barbara is made to feel like if you would just do this thing, right? If you would just do this thing, like your students would benefit so much. But really, like any kind of system, like Barbara is a very good teacher, which the show makes clear over and over and over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. So like any system that makes Barbara perform a dog and pony show to show that her students deserve school supplies is a system that will inevitably end in trauma porn videos.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on the poor huerfanito, like trauma porn videos. Because like Omar... To me, this is something that students of lower income schools are made to perform even through college applications.
Okay.
You have to, it's not just that like, we're like a scrappy school. You have to perform. Mm-hmm. We are like, you have to list every single disadvantage for people to care. To care, right. And it's like, until you see that video on your TV with the black and white sepia filter, did you not care before then, right? That is exactly it.
And probably not. They probably didn't.
That is exactly precisely it. It's like, why should...
Until you see something that makes you feel good about yourself to donate.
I mean, I just... And I think the show does a really good job of showing... it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's cringy. Yeah. Like, when Janine sees it, she's just mortified. And she knows what Barbara's reaction is going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Because why should kids be with a little, Oliver Twist, please don't want some more, begging? Mm-hmm. That is not how the whole thing works. Again, the reason that you get running water in your house and you get electricity from the grid and you have, like, a paved road in front of your house isn't because like you're such a worthy citizen of it. It's because your tax dollars go to pay for a system.
Right.
And that's how the system works. Right. And like, I think that in the same way that like, yeah, you don't charge your kindergartner rent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like kids from wealthy elementary schools. Because I went to an event at an elementary school like 2 weeks ago, and I was floored at how luxurious the school is, right? So like we keep saying public schools, but like there are public schools that have gorgeous brand new facilities, right? But like did those kids have to talk about every single disadvantage and like stuff in their lives? No. And it's not that those kids are not worthy of that. Right. It's that all kids in our country, by dint of being in the United States,
are worthy of that.
Are worthy of that. And like that is a right of, like, if you're a child in the United States, like we invest in you, you know, not because you're cute enough or poor enough or whatever, but because like you're the future of the country. Whitney Houston told us, Omar.
Yeah, she did.
She did.
In that wonderful song.
In that song, the children are our future.
Yeah.
And then Barbara says, do you remember what she says? Because that one just kind of like blew me away.
Barbara said they don't have half of the stuff that they need, but they don't need to know that, which was a quote that I kind of really put things into perspective for me, because I, you know, as a first year teacher, you come in and you're like, well, I'm going to do what I can. And, you know, I talk to you, we have these conversations, and you put things into perspective of like, yes, you know, you want to do these for your things for your classroom and for the kids, but also we need to pressure legislation and them to do the right thing. And also we, you know, I remember growing up in the school district, I never felt like we were missing something, you know. I always felt like the teacher had everything. I felt like they lived there and they had everything prepared and everything was like set, you know. And they probably didn't have everything, but they were going to let us know that, you know, which is good.
I'm of two minds about it, you know, because I think that when I'm giving my students is like, I try every day to like give the best of myself. But like the best of myself isn't the material things in my classroom. Like the best of myself is like my ability to teach,
right?
You know, and I do feel really strongly about that. And I don't want kids to ever feel like their experience is lesser than or whatever. Because like honestly, I would pit the experience that kids are getting at the school where we teach against any private school. I think that we are bringing our A game. But I do think that there hits a certain point where like I want kids also, especially like high school students, look to your left and your right and demand better.
Yeah.
You know, like, no, I don't want kids to grow up and like beyond the gratitude is like a wonderful thing for the soul, for children, for adults and stuff. I don't want kids to be like entitled brats, but like I also don't want kids growing up thinking that like they've been that they have to be, that their default thing on everything has to be gratitude for what they're being given, when in fact like no, that is literally how the thing works.
And especially I feel like with our population of students, which are, you know, majorly Hispanic, and I know for me, I was Hispanic and I came from a lower income family, and you are taught gratitude all the time and to do these things, but you shouldn't have to accept it all the time. You should want to have just as much of a good facility as someone else and demand for that too.
My parents immigrated here for education.
Yeah. And
so like, yes, that is something I'm very, very, very grateful for myself. This, like, gratitude is important, you know, and that's where it comes from. But I think that, you know, there's gratitude of another kind, which is I am grateful to be a part of students' lives. You know, like I am grateful to have been like one little piece, you know, in somebody's path. Right. You know, so I you know, when I die, it's gonna say I taught Omar. I taught, you know, so I you know, but I think that of the last couple of years of like COVID teaching and whatever, I have felt a lot of gratitude for like the families that work with and like the kids and so on and so forth, and that has really sustained me. So yeah, no, that video that touched a raw nerve with me, because like you feel that temptation every time you write a video, right? You want to give people a picture of the school where you work as like, hey, we're not like luxury central. You know, these are things that we actually need. These are like necessities for the student and for their education and so forth. Like you feel that, like you want to paint an accurate picture, and at the same time, like you don't want you don't want to do trauma porn. Yeah.
Is that me?
And I think it's me.
Okay,
so that's that, and then the beeline.
Well, let me.
Oh no!
One
more.
thing real
Yes.
quick. So, in my classroom, it's a science classroom, so it should be a science lab, right? And the students are always like, not complaining, but asking, when are we going to do actual science labs? And we can't because the what's it called? The eye.
Microscope?
No, the eye wash station.
Oh yeah.
The eye wash station and the emergency shower station, it doesn't have a drain and it doesn't work. God. They just installed it in the concrete, So it's things like that where they ask me like, why is this here if this isn't working? And that's when I just tell them, ask your school district. They're the ones that put it there, So even if we don't point things out to them, sometimes they themselves see, and these are sixth graders and they're starting to see that. So
I do have to say, like, a conversation you and I have had offline that is like tangentially related is like, man, I will get so fired up and like talk to a lawmaker and talk to parents, talk to this on, these necessities. But equal to that is I get so mad at kids when they don't take care of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because you feel like, I fought so hard for us to get this. Yeah. Oh my God, you have to take but you find yourself literally saying the words, this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Because middle schoolers will just absolutely shred. Like, why do they like to break the pencils?
Yeah.
Why do they like to break
them? And they like to take my pretty rocks.
Yes. So I feel like there's the flip side of like, you kids, get off my lawn.
Right.
But
we wouldn't feel like that if we had all that we needed for the classroom. So.
You know what, Omar? I would still feel like that. If kids, well, oh man, they're just destructive sometimes. They're destructive. But I should not say that as a blanket statement, because there's a lot of things that kids actually do a really, really good job taking care of, but like,
could you tell them real quick about your pet frog, was it?
My God.
They took really good care of that.
Y'all, this is Omar trolling me a little bit, because last year during COVID times when we were fully online, we were only fully online for like a couple of weeks, but in the window when we were fully online, right at the beginning of the school year, I had this one class that had a pet turtle. Okay, his name was Barry. All right. So we had this pet turtle, and they did do a really good job of taking care of him. So at the end of every class, Barry would go to a different student, and at the beginning of class, the student that had Barry would tell us like what they did with him, right? So it was block schedule. So we were meeting like every 2 days. So like Barry had all of these adventures. He like was on the trampoline at somebody's house. He played softball. He did this. He ate Chick-fil-A, which I don't think is that healthy for turtles, but like we discussed it. And then when we went hybrid, then some kids were in person and some kids were still online, and I would start to get like Barry the Turtle fan art. So we had like air dry clay Barry, we had like painted Barry, like all this stuff. And one day the math teacher comes in and she's like, check it, how are you managing to like get this turtle like physically from place to place, in the shutdown and this and that and the other. And I was like, oh, no, there is no turtle. And she's like, oh, no. I mean, the class pet, the one they keep telling me about. I'm like, yeah, there is no turtle. She's like, no, they've told me a lot of details. I'm like, yeah, that is complete fabrication. Just like a complete fabrication.
I love that.
Yeah, on the first day of school, somebody said something and like I misheard it, and somehow that turned into an inside joke of like our pet turtle who was completely made up. He was an imaginary turtle. But that imaginary turtle had like a long, rich, full life, many adventures, and I feel that they really learned how to like care for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was in fact the best care we've ever taken of anything, and he was our imaginary turtle.
I love that. That was awesome.
Yeah. You know what? During a online and a hybrid school, you had to find your fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so and then should we just talk real quick about
Gregory?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I am I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about this. So Gregory is a dude.
Yes.
And he has kind of 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out the door because he's hired as a sub.
Mm-hmm.
And he has all of these really anonymous, like, animal inspiration posters everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And Janine asks him about this. Okay, so number 1, when I started out, Instagram teacher stuff was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess my first question is, did you feel pressure as a new teacher to like super decorate your room?
I did feel a little bit of pressure just put upon myself just because I wanted to provide a nice area for the students to learn.
Right.
So it was a little different for us though because we were going to move buildings the next year.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't bother, but I did buy some lights and like set up some planets and stuff. But
okay, that's my second question is could you describe a little bit your science room
currently?
Because it has a vibe and I love it.
Yeah,
okay.
So currently, I mean, it's all white walls. I wanted to paint, but I didn't have time to because of all the training they made us do. But I have like vines hanging from the ceiling, and then I have a lamp that projects like the sun, which hopefully we're going to turn that into a big project for the solar system.
Oh, wow.
And I covered the windows, and I bought some lamps now because the first semester was very bright in there, and now since we're in space science, I kind of wanted it to be dark for them to watch videos, presentations, and all that. Yeah.
Okay, so I love your room. And then what advice would you give Gregory or somebody who's starting out?
Okay. What advice would I give Gregory?
Yeah.
I mean, I would not put too much on the walls personally because I have a few things on the wall and students have asked me about it maybe once this whole school year. They don't really pay much attention to it. So I would say don't pay much attention or spend much money on all of that. Just a nice space for them. They like the vines. They like the lights.
Yeah.
They really like the lights.
It's very relaxing in there.
Yeah. So I guess just more focus on like the feel of the classroom, creating like a calm space rather than like putting information on the walls. Because you'll have to take it down during testing anyways.
Well, you already know my mix is not a good mix. Because, like, you're having anchor charts, having personal stuff, and then having, like, student work. You know? And I feel like Instagram teacher stuff is such an emphasis on, like, just making everything perfect looking.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Like, student work is not going to be perfect looking because they're kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and they love it when you display their stuff.
Yeah. I loved walking down your hallway and they have like the science stuff out. Yeah.
What is your opinion on like classroom decor?
I'm a big collage person. You know.
I remember it was so iconic. Yeah. Your collage of postcards from all over. We would just like at the beginning of a class just be looking at it until you told us to sit down. Yeah, I remember.
I you know, over the years, my collage has expanded from, like, things that I've brought from places to, like, things that kids have sent me, you know, or made me and put up, which I just really love. I always have guilt about, like, more information things that I can put up. But those are kind of, like, on a rotating basis as needed, depending on what we're studying.
Right.
I don't really do store-bought a whole lot.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm a typography snob.
Yes.
Like if there was,
and they're all so ugly, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. If they ever made really stylish looking,
then maybe I'd consider it. But
maybe I'd consider
with these ugly fonts, I'm good.
Yeah. That is pretty much how I feel.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. No, but it's I don't know. I guess my classroom decor is like as the spirit moves.
Yeah.
I did spend a lot of time painting my new bookshelves.
You did. I remember.
So that like you can tell where my like decorating energy goes into. I'm like, I'm an English teacher. I gotta have nice looking shelves. And that was the first time, like this year was the first time in my career I'd ever had like built-in bookshelves. And that aren't like cheap particle board.
Yeah.
I was just really excited. I mean, I'm still super excited. It's March and I still get like a little thrill of satisfaction walking in. I'm like, yeah, look at those shelves, look at those shelves, you know.
Nice. You put a lot of work into them. So
Yeah. So it's good. I like that the show is using the decoration in Gregory's room both as a proxy for like him investing in like teaching as a career, but also like his relationship with students. Yeah. I think that's really sweet.
Right, because he ends up putting up their work on the wall, right?
Yeah. And like he's so cute. Everything that Gregory does is like wonderful and good in my eyes.
Yeah.
Because he's just a doll. All right. Well, this is a really good episode.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed this one. One last thing I want to ask you. What is your take or opinion on teachers pay teachers?
Ooh, Omar, why you get so messy?
Because we've talked about this before.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it honestly put me into perspective on a lot of things.
Well, okay. God, I can't even remember the last time that we talked about this, but like, I just have a lot of cranky opinions on things. Okay. So, I just right off the bat, Teachers Pay Teachers is a platform where you can make activities or lesson plans and then sell them to other teachers. That's what it is. And I have no judgment at all whatsoever for any teacher with a side hustle at all. You know, respect the game. We're all broke. It's great. It's not personal. But, on the one hand, I just think that teaching overall is a team sport. And if somebody wants to use my stuff, like I'll just give it to them. On the other hand, but I can see like if it's worksheets or stuff, there's just a lot of people selling stuff that is materials that they didn't strictly make.
Right.
People selling materials that have like some pretty problematic activities in them, like history, and I also think that school districts should not make people pay for doing their jobs.
Yeah.
I think that your job should pay you for doing the job.
Yes.
And that you should be provided with materials that you need.
And for materials that do not have spelling errors, because almost every material that I have downloaded from the district has 1 or 2 spelling errors.
Yes.
So.
So yeah, I think that like Donors Choose, I think that Teachers Pay Teachers is a sign of dysfunction.
Okay.
Now, I know people who have like found it to be a godsend when they're about to go to maternity leave or have like leave and they have a whole bunch of stuff that they need, like a long-term sub to do or stuff. And again, like, or if you're just busy. I don't have any judgment for people using it, for people putting stuff on there, but I do think that like the fact that it exists is a sign of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You just see stuff online of people getting frustrated, and I'm like, oh, hey, that's my lesson, and you're selling it. So that's not nice behavior. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, as a teacher that started mid-pandemic and there was just so much going on, it did help me out. And as a first-year teacher still this year, I use it every now and then. But I do see what you're saying, and I think it's a good point. I also think that I have had to endure the frustration with the fonts a lot. And I try to edit them and I can't because it's their material. But yeah, the fonts is a big deal.
Can I tell you like 2 font stories and then we got to wrap up the episode? Yeah. Okay, font story number 1 was that when I announced to my friends I was going to become a teacher, my best friend in the world, Laura, if you're out there, picked up the phone and she was just not 100% supportive. And I was like, so hurt. Right? I mean, she was like 99.99999% supportive, but there was like that 0.001. And she just got quiet. She's like, the thing is, they're going to use Comic Sans all the time. Like, you are entering a profession in which, like, people are going to use Comic Sans all the time, and it is just going to, like, annoy you every single time. And I just feel like I'm going to be hearing about it for the next, whatever. And I hesitate to report back that, like, in fact, that is exactly what happened. That's number one. And then my other font story is I considered applying to Columbia Teachers College. I go to New York. Columbia Teachers College. This is really, really nice ed program. Mm-hmm. I go to New York City. I take public transportation way, way up to Columbia. I find on the little map where the Teachers College is. I open the door, and facing the door, there is a bulletin board, like made to look like a classroom bulletin board, like rick-rack board or whatever, filled with Comic Sans. And I literally said out loud, I bet they don't do this at the law school. And like slammed the door. Never applied. True story.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah. That's funny. It's probably like an amazing program, but
they use Comic Sans.
But they use Comic Sans and stuff. And I've had kids. I've trained every kid that I've taught in whatever. Me. Yeah, including you. And I know that there are Comic Sans defenders out there because it is, some people say, easier for students with dyslexia. But I just want to point out that there are like multiple fonts that are easier to read fonts for dyslexic people. And that dyslexic people also deserve some aesthetic joy in their lives. All right. So y'all, thank you for listening.
Yes, and remember, you can download the episode, follow us, and keep us on your podcast app so that you can get notifications for the next episode.
And call your lawmaker. Get a decent school budget for your state. Vote. All right. Thank you.
All right. See y'all next time.